I'm George Galloway, and I present كلمة on الميادين television. Here we are in London. I speak my words freely, either in Parliament, on television, here on the streets of London. كلمة means free word. That's what I speak. So كلمة is a two-way conversation. Check it out on الميادين television. Welcome to كلمة with me, George Galloway, for Mayadeen television. Coming to you from London with an audience of distinguished experts and one or two enthusiastic amateurs like me. We are talking this evening about the Rohingya people in Burma who are being massacred, who are being ethnically cleansed, their property and their land stolen, burned, a scorched earth policy by the forces of the Burmese military dictatorship, with the vindication of that lipstick on the pig of Burmese fascism, the Nobel Prize winner Aung San Suu Kyi. Only yesterday, the darling of liberals throughout the world, herself a victim of political violence and oppression, is now proselytizing for the very forces who kept her under house arrest for more than 20 years. Hundreds of thousands of the Rohingya Muslim people from Burma have now been driven by land and by sea at very, very great cost across the border into Bangladesh, itself one of the poorest countries in the world. Most people know, though some turn away, of the dreadful suffering of the Rohingya people. Most people know that there is a kind of genocide taking place. It's not a word I toss around easily. I usually resist it. But a genocide is an attempt to completely eradicate a type or category of people, and permanently. And that's exactly what's happening in Burma today. That much most people will agree on. But more pertinently for me is the fact that all of this is happening and nobody is doing anything at all about it, at least anything meaningfully about it. I've been talking about this subject for many years. I organized my first demonstration in defense of the Rohingya people almost 6 years ago. Now the media has picked up on the story, that's true. Now politicians are paying lip service and clucking about this ethnic cleansing that's going on, but nobody is doing anything about it, neither in the West nor in the East. And I'm going to be extremely critical of both. For the British, whose Foreign Secretary has just announced £25 million in aid for the Rohingya refugees in Bangladesh, that hasn't stopped him sending British Army officers and trainers to Burma to train the very armed forces that are carrying out the massacres. How absurdly circular is that? You're spending British taxpayers' money to empower the Burmese military, and then you're spending more British taxpayers' money to relieve the suffering of those the Burmese military are murdering and driving out. It's business as usual in Burma for British companies, and indeed for Western companies of all kinds. The hypocrites that run the British and other Western governments is pretty well known to everyone watching this show this evening. More uncomfortable is the fact that the East is doing nothing either. With the exception of Turkey and the government of Erdogan, not a state or a government I normally pray in aid or heap praise upon, is virtually the only Muslim government that has even given any money to relieve the suffering of the refugees. The money, of course, and the refugees are only one part of the problem. The bigger problem is to stop the massacres and stop the ethnic cleansing and let the refugees go home. Now that's a familiar story to viewers of this program. But where are all these Arab armies? Where are all these Muslim armies? Millions of men under arms, huge air forces, navies, all kinds of armaments on which they've spent trillions. None of them are able to lift a finger to even threaten the Burmese regime that's conducting this ethnic cleansing, this attempted genocide. That's a very, very serious charge. It would be even more serious if it hadn't already happened in relation to the Palestinian people. And I myself see tremendous parallels between what happened to the Palestinians and what's happening now to the Rohingya. First of all, the focus moves away from the fact that they've been ethnically cleansed, their property seized, their land stolen, they've been driven into someone else's country. The focus moves onto how much money we can raise in the collecting buckets to feed the refugees. And as years go by, the demand for the right of return of those refugees to their own land on which they've lived for centuries becomes weaker and weaker. And when I put to Human Rights Watch on my radio show the other day this parallel, they didn't want to know about it. They said, well, the Palestinian is a very complicated historical issue. But the same parallel demonstrates that neither West nor East is prepared to step up to the plate to rise to the occasion. The Rohingya people are defenseless. Contrary to the hostile, inspired propaganda, there are no terrorists in Burma. There are no Muslim extremists. There are no armed Muslim elements. The people have only the clothes in which they stand. And seeing mud-walled and grass huts and humble dwellings on fire in Southeast Asia is, for someone of my age, not an unfamiliar sight. Someone of my age who grew up in the post-Korean War era, who grew up in the Vietnam War era, Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos, and many other parts of Asia, have suffered these kind of communal surges of violence, mayhem, and murder. And nobody does anything about it. Because, you see, the Burmese regime is a very profitable milk cow. They don't have to worry about labor costs or trade unions or democratic rights, human rights. They don't have to worry about any of that. Their population can be effectively a forced pool of labor which can hew the wood and draw the water and allow multinational access to the fantastic riches that exist in Burma. This situation is complicated too in other ways that are uncomfortable for me and for others, because not only is Israel Burma's best friend, China is a pretty good friend too. And the Chinese government is blocking action at the United Nations that would effectively mean some kind of international response in defense of the Rohingya. So I'm asking tonight, not just why this is happening, but how come nobody, East or West, is ready to do anything meaningful about it. Let's take our first distinguished expert. Introduce yourself, please, sir.
Good evening, Assalamu alaikum. My name is Raja Zishan, and I'm the president of the Free Speech, Free World movement. Well, I would like to say that let's start with the history, because it started from the 1823 to 1885, the three Burmese Anglo Wars, when British basically got the overall hold over there. And then in 1941, during the Second World War. Now, that was the major point, because the Burmese, basically, they were supporting the Japanese at that time. The Muslims, they were supporting the British people over there. Now, the thing is, the Burmese over there, they got the kind of like a idea that, this was kind of like against us. So, and we have to finish them. And because that's why they got the personal against Muslim at that time. And then in 1948, they got their own independence over there, and then they had a military rule from 1962 to 2011. Now the question is, I believe that the Aung San Suu Kyi, basically, she's also responsible for this, because although she had some, personal affiliations over there as well, she was victimized as well at that time, because the military, basically, she was in the prison for 20 years, and that means that she didn't learn anything from the history, because Muslims, they had a lots of contributions in support of her as well. So at the same time, I believe the United Nations is also responsible for it, because United Nations in 2005, they passed one of the laws which is called the R2P, Responsibility to Protect. And under this law, if they could do in Kenya, in 2007, there was the massive kind of like a destruction over there in Kenya in 2007 after the elections, and UN basically intervened under that law. So why not now? So this is their responsibility to do that. Another point I would like to say is the misconception of the religion. Burmese over there, I believe that every religion basically is promised to give the peace in the world. Burmese over there, I believe that they can't understand the true theme of their religion. They need to understand that it basically gives the rights to the other people, the fundamental rights to the other people. And now we have seen some of the videos that some of the preachers over there, they're provoking around the people over there.
Yes, they have their own Bin Laden, a Buddhist Bin Laden.
Hate speech as well at the same time.
Buddhist monks are involved in this mass murder.
That's true.
Most people think that Buddhists are very peaceful people who chant and eat leaves.
And they're giving 7 ways to kill Muslims over there, which clearly shows the mindset that they even don't know, they don't even understand their own religion over there. So I believe that this has to basically, the UN is responsible.
Well, look, all of that is true, brother, but what is Pakistan doing about it?
Well, Pakistan at the same time, our Prime Minister yesterday, there was a basically assembly over there in the United States, and he clearly said that that has to stop over there because unfortunately, Mr. Galway, OIC, I can't see any kind of like unity over there. Some people said that this is like just OIC, Organization of Islamic Conference, is like a dinner club. So we have to be united over there. All the Muslim countries, they have to get united. They have to take their own personal interest. As you basically mentioned in your intro as well about the services of Turkish Prime Minister. At the same time, I will also give credit to Maldives as well, because they basically announced the complete boycott of Myanmar. So I believe that this is the responsibility, because this is not against the Muslims. It's against the humanity. You can't see, because these kind of incidents, even a single human can't basically tolerate this. Another point, Mr. Galway, I would like to highlight that who is actually filming all these kind of stuff and then circulate it, because Muslims are not allowed to do that. International media, they're not allowed to cover over there. So that means the British, the Burma army and the local people over there, they're responsible for it. And they don't have any fear for it. They don't have any fear to spread it. Because they're confident enough that nothing's going to happen. So I believe this tradition must have to stop, because for the future...
It's happening in real time, live on television. We can watch it. And that, as you say, means that the people filming it are not ashamed of it, and they have no fear of any consequence arising from it. Sir?
I am a Rohingya. My name is Nurul Islam. I'm a chairman of the Arkan Rohingya National Organization. In fact, our problem is that we are very much peaceful living people in Burma. We have a long history. But the problem is in Burma is intolerance. Despite our millennia-old establishment, thousands of years old establishment in the country, they do not tolerate us. We have been subjected, not now, it's from long ago, for a very long time. This is more than 60 years' time. We have been subjected to ethnic, religious, and political persecution. Their objective is to rid Arkan of the Muslim populations. More particularly, we have been, the worst come to the worst when the military came to power in 1962. And then military has unilaterally declared that we are illegal immigrants from Bangladesh. In fact, this is not the question of illegal immigration, but the question of intolerance, as I told you. And time and again, they are, conducting drive operation against our people. And by now, particularly from 1978, we have been facing crimes against humanity. And in 1978, 1991 with the unprecedented exodus into Bangladesh because of the persecution and the large-scale military crackdown. And again, from 2012, this is what is now doing against our people is completely genocide. This is genocide by all legal standard, legal provision. Now the thing is that just because of protracted persecution and crimes against humanity and atrocity crimes against our people, about 1-2 million people out of our more than 3 million population has already been in the outside the countries. Recently in Bangladesh, within 3 weeks' time, from 25 August, 450,000 at least people have taken shelter after their houses abandoned, and the rape, murder, and loot, all these are the regular phenomena. Even 250 villages completely destroyed and abandoned, and at least 7,000 people were killed or abandoned. And those who are fleeing the persecution, they are attacked, and these people are what's called they're hunted by the military and military sponsors and the Buddhist and the extremist people. Nowhere they are safe. In their houses, in their escape route, in the jungle, in the hiding places. Every while they are crossing the border over to Bangladesh, even our enemies, they are using helicopter gunship and the machine gun on our people.
Let me press you on a couple of points, please. First of all, why is this happening? Is it, as I suspect, from the Burmese mentality of ethno-religious superiority, that they want homogenic Burma, they don't want Rohingya, they don't want any of the national minorities within Burma, they want a pure, if I can use that word, a pure Burmese Buddhist state, in which case the comparison with the extremists who brought about Israel is very apt. They also believe in ethno-religious superiority and the cleansing of the land from minorities, however long they've been there, even when it's their land to begin with. Or is it about economic theft? Is it the theft of the land, the theft of the resources under the land, or is it a mixture of them both?
Actually, it's a both. The first is that this is you are right. Burma is the multinational, multicultural country. Many people.
But 67% are Burma.
Yeah.
And 87%
but all along the Burmese borders, different ethnic peoples are living.
Karen people, Mon people,
But
Rohingya.
they are pursuing a policy, the Burmese government, Burmese politicians, from the beginning, to pursue a policy of total assimilation and Burmanization, in fact. So in Arakan, this is they want to make a clean sweep of the Muslim and turn it into Burmanized Buddhist religion. That is their policy one. The second thing is economic interests. We have a huge, the natural resources are still untapped. This is like a gas and the world. Even Chinese interest is there, Indian interest is there.
China has a pipeline going across Burma.
The two pipelines they have already constructed. One is for the gas, the other is for the world. And they are already linked it to Kunming from Chokpyu in Arakan with Kunming to Kunming actually in the Yunnan province. This game is also going on there. And also they have another interest, the Chinese interest is they want to have a naval base established in Bay of Bengal. And we have in Chokpyu Island, we have naturally sheltered deep water harbor, in Chopio Island, that the Chinese want to have established their bases there.
Okay, my second point I'd like you to clarify for us. It is implied some places, including by Aung San Suu Kyi, that it's not actually the Burmese state that's doing this. It's paramilitaries and extremists and so on. And the Burmese military and police are trying to hold the ring. In your estimation, isn't it true that the Burmese state forces themselves are responsible for the bulk of the atrocities that are taking place?
Particularly the Burmese militaries are responsible. And Aung San Suu Kyi is complicit to that. Because this has been doing, we have become completely defenseless, we have to told. And this is genocide is going. When the Burmese government, instead of protecting their own subject, they are killing the people, they are driving us. They have created a situation, extreme situation, impossible situation for the living for our people. Then this is Burmese government, Burmese military, and both the military and government is responsible for this.
It's a miserable story, but tears are not enough as a response. And we'll discuss in the second segment of the show the kind of response that is realistic to demand, both of the West and of the East. I'm George Galloway. This is كلمة on Mayadeen television, coming to you from London. You're watching كلمة on Mayadeen television with me, George Galloway, coming from London, but discussing the events in Burma, or Myanmar as the regime renamed it, and discussing too the absolute pusillanimity of Western and Eastern governments towards what is, by anybody's standards, a major challenge, a challenge that amounts legally and morally to an attempt at genocide, the absolute eradication of the Rohingya Muslim people from Burma. We took the camera of Mayadeen television to a demonstration about this subject. We talked to some well-known people and also some less well-known. Let's take a look at what they said.
You can raise your hand by yourself as well.
People are appalled and outraged that there are 300,000 refugees in Bangladesh, but thousands of people have been killed and thousands of women have been raped and children have been slaughtered. And so, therefore, thousands of people have come just not only in front of the Burmese embassy, but also in front of Downing Street, demanding that our government should stop supporting Burma, but also the training of their military. And at the same time, that our government should demand from International Criminal Court that there should be proceedings against military rulers and military leadership of Burma. And Aung San Suu Kyi's Nobel Peace Prize should be withdrawn. But more importantly, which I'm saying again and again, that Rohingya community's rights, citizenship rights should be restored. They should also be given compensation. They should be brought back to their own homes. And there should be a permanent solution as citizens of this country. You know, if I go back to the Emperor Aurangzeb, many hundreds of years ago, the king of Burma then slaughtered Muslims and Aurangzeb sent his army. 100 years ago they did the same. 4 years ago they did the same. This will continue until the rights have been restored. This military junta in 1982 withdrew their citizenship, which is against international law and should be restored.
Any evil in the world, then try to change that with your hands. If you can't change that with your hands, change that.
What do you think the international community, and not just the Muslim countries, can do to help the Rohingya people?
We have all united. We should be all united. Of course, this country can do a lot. Our government can do a lot. Can stop instead of considering. They have to act now. If they act now, and of course stop the genocide, and they can stop the genocide and stop the exodus. International, all has to get united. United Nations Secretary General. I talked to him a couple of months ago about this, and brought it forward that is a genocide. But he said no, it's not a genocide. But what we are trying to do, we are trying to get our lawyers to make a proposal to United Nations recognize is a genocide. Is a genocide. Aung San Suu Kyi she is a murderer and should be take off her Nobel Prize.
May Allah Ta'ala accept our dua.
Well, as I said, some powerful voices there at the demonstration. One of them, the first, Lord Ahmed, a member of the British House of Lords, and other religious figures like the Imam from Oxford. There are many people in the Muslim community here in Britain that are greatly occupied by this story. But when the British state is actually complicit with a regime that is murdering Muslims, how radicalizing an agent do you think that might be? How extremizing might that be for young British Muslims to see their co-religionists being slaughtered with the complicity of their own government? This is an important point, you see. I'm all for defending ourselves to the nth degree against Islamist extremism that blows itself up in our midst and tries to murder us. But you will never be able to stem the flow of that extremism if your government is continuing to be complicit in crimes against Muslims abroad. This is the sad, lamentable fact. Let me go to the gentleman in the middle. Yes, sir. Say who you are and what you'd like to say.
Hi, I'm Adam. Nice to be here again. I'm just a politics enthusiast. One of the reasons is because I'm Muslim, so these stories going on in the world affect me as well personally and other people. On your question about why is this happening in Burma, there's a few reasons. From the West point of view, there's an interest, there's an opportunity to sell arms to Burma. If you ask who is arming Burma, a lot of people say Israel.
Israel is a major armor, but
Russia,
so are many others.
Wherever there's a problem in a country, other countries will take opportunities of that. It's just a natural thing. And another, from the eastern point of view, the Muslims are asleep. For many years, for generations, Muslims are asleep. I don't know what it's going to take for Muslims to wake up, to see the problem. The problem is there's a war against Muslims. This is not a war just on terror. There's a war on the Muslims for many reasons. There's problems on either side. Now, I'll give you an example. If Somalia, for example, are persecuting Christians, a lot of people will speak about it. Christian countries will speak about it. America, Britain will speak about it. If, let's say, France is killing Jews, right, Israel will speak about it, and they'll take action.
Well,
if
the Rohingya were Jews, Israel would already be bombing and attacking Burma. But the same doesn't occur when
it doesn't happen from the Islamic point of view. This is a problem because we're more concerned about what car we're driving. We don't take care of our people. One religion, billions of people, Muslims, right? Billions of people, but the divisions. So the West they'll always take advantage of the divisions. They'll go from one side and say, they want to kill you, they're against you. Muslims will always fight.
Is there a race issue here? Of course, Islam has no racism in it, but Muslims can be very racist indeed.
A lot of people tell you that in Islam there's no racism, but there is racism. Even worse than...
Within the Ummah, there's a lot of
worse than the racism we face from the Western people. Right? You face... I'm talking this as an African. I go to mosques in the country, Indian mosque, Pakistan. We get along with a lot of people. But there are issues like when it comes to marriages, friendships, or businesses, this comes out. I can't be with this person, he's African. I can't be with that person. This happens. But a lot of people say, well, I'm Muslim, I can't be racist. So these issues will come to the surface when you see genocides like this happening. The Burmese problem, this is not a major problem. It's not. This is a problem that can be solved in a matter of days, right? Countries can stand up and say, listen, this has to stop. It's easy as that. It's not complicated. But then another reason is we're living in a time where we're facing the rise of the right, fascism, right? The Buddhist monks now, they're coming up. And one thing you have to take notice is the script and the words used. If you go to Sri Lanka, you see monks over there. They use the same words that you hear in America, you see in Germany, wherever there's a rise of nationalism. I personally have no problems with nationalism. If it's to defend your country, I have no problems with that. But when you turn that into racism, it becomes a problem, right? And I say that...
Look, nationalism is like electricity. It can be used to keep a baby alive in an incubator, or it can be used to execute a man in the electric chair. The question is who's using it and for what?
It's for personal gains, spiritual, whatever we believe in.
It's supremacy, isn't it?
It is supremacy. It is supremacy. There's supremacy in every society.
You get white supremacism.
This is white supremacy.
Buddhist, Burmese supremacism.
This will happen. It's been going on for centuries, right? But when you use that to kill other people, there's a problem. And as Muslims, every Muslim, if you read the Quran, it talks about justice, standing up against against the oppressed. You need to stand up. But why is it that Muslims never even say a word? This issue has been happening for years. It's only now that I'm seeing it on social media and on television. This has been happening for years. Why is it that people don't talk about it? Because the West will never show it. Muslims have been murdered, right? If it wasn't Muslims, this would have been broadcasted every single day. But it's not happening. So we need to take action. But how do you take action if you're not united? One book, one language, maybe different races, but why is it that you're not united?
Thank you. Let's hear from one of the ladies in the middle row.
Hello, everyone.
Yes.
My name's Rani Begum. I'm a primary school teacher and I live in London. Seeing all the stuff that's on social media right now has affected me and my husband. We have had lots of talks over how we could help and make a change because we could see the government's not helping. I've always been a proud British. I've been born here and I feel helpless that we can't. I don't understand why we can't stand our ground and make changes and help these people for the current time that we're living now. This genocide should not be happening. So me and my husband and a group of friends, just individuals, have grouped together and like humanitarians, we are heading off in a couple of weeks' time to the refugee camps in Dhaka where the persecuted some have safely come across.
They're in very miserable situations.
They are.
Because, I mean, Bangladesh is a very poor country itself. It has a huge population and struggles with its own population. It's now being asked to host hundreds of thousands of extra Rohingya refugees, but with nobody really putting the money up to pay for it.
No.
And you see, even in European countries like Greece, what a struggle for an EU member state, a large influx of refugees and others fleeing and seeking shelter in your land. You see how hard it is for a European country to do it. How much harder is it for Bangladesh?
They can't cope with the volume of people, and it's just because my parents are from back home, we're getting this information how the country's coping. They're doing as much as they can, and the recent conditions of flooding has washed away a lot of shelters and stuff. So the group that we've made, we just called ourselves humanitarians, or Insanium in Arabic, to go out there and do what we can, just individuals, not with a charity or nothing, to see if we can make a change. And I feel very, very passionate about this because I teach little children in my classroom, which they are Key Stage 1 and 2. However, I can't share how I feel right now to them. But the parents that I'm interacting with, they're unaware of the situation because the media's not, our government or the media is not responding the way they should.
And how do you feel about the fact that Britain's actually yet again involved, leaving aside the role that Britain played in Burma as the colonial power and the divide and rule that was a hallmark of the British Empire, leaving even if we say let's keep that in the history books, right now, your army, spending your taxes, is training the Burmese military. How do you feel about that?
I feel really disgusted. I've always been a proud British citizen, and I just feel like, how can we be a part of this genocide currently, in this time, in this age? It's just terrifying that the next generation that are come, they'll see this, and it's shameful that we were a part of this and we didn't do nothing about it.
Well done, you. You, sir?
Yes.
Please take the microphone.
Sorry. Thank you.
Go ahead, sir.
Just with a caveat about nationalism. I think nationalism, in a way, is a cause of a lot of the problems in the world, a lot of the political strife, mainly being that after colonialism, the West decided to divide the world up in like a monopoly board. And for most efficiency, they would divide them up by nations, according to major language or ethnic group. But of course, humans can't be pigeonholed so conveniently. And you've had multi-ethnic and multi-religious and multilingual groups. And in these very same countries that you see these multilingual, multi-ethnic groups in the era of nation states, you see coincidentally ethnic problems and internecine warfare or strife on various levels, either political, social, or it becomes violent. And the reason being is in a nation state, if the state represents the will of the people, which people does it represent? Which ethnic group gets to decide what goes? And of course, if it's majority rule, then the minority is seen as inconvenient, as maybe a fifth column or a whole number of things. So this is why you see in the West, with the rise of immigration and this questioning of what does it mean to be English, French, Spanish, or what have you, you see this uncertainty and suspicion over people who are not of the ethnic group or the predominant ethnic group of that nation, which you see the rise of the far right is representative of this concern. So I would say that nationalism is playing the same role it's been playing in a number of countries we see, and Rohingya are the minority, and they are targeted on this. The second aspect I wanted to add about nationalism is it's also what prevents the Muslim world from actually interfering and dealing with interfering with the Burmese militias and militaries' wanton rampage. Reason being is because they don't see it in their national interest. They have the US, they have China, they have a number of other countries, and they don't see it in the interest of their nation, because the purpose of each nation is to look at the interest of their own national group, not what is in humanity's best concern, not what's in Muslims' best concern, or whomever. So what we find is that you see that these countries in the Middle East and so on generally won't lift a finger. Of course, Turkey, with its, let's say, increasing Islamic sentiments, we see they are bucking that trend. And it's interesting, because maybe a little historical tidbit was that 100 or so years ago, or 150 years ago or so, when the Ottomans were facing mass debts due to the Balkan Wars against Russia and other countries, the Rohingya Muslims donated a massive donation to the Ottomans because they saw them as their fellow co-religionists. And so in this sense, some people say that the Ottomans or the Turks always pay their debts, and so they are now giving that aid back. But and so in essence, my point is this, that nationalism, I think, is both the cause of the problem and is preventing that solution from seeing fruition, whereas Islam...
Not that Turkey isn't also an extremely nationalistic place.
Of course,
also.
but it's...
Ask the Kurdish people, who are fellow Muslims, about Turkish nationalism, just in case anyone thinks that you're whitewashing the Turkish record. But I'll bring you back in after this. You're watching كلمة with me, George Galloway, on Mayadeen television, talking about the Rohingya, the massacres, and the complete inaction of more or less everyone. We did take the كلمة camera onto the streets of London. Here's what we found.
Brother, please, I request again. I will continue.
Are you aware that Israel is supplying arms to Myanmar government?
I'm sure Israel is behind all this, 100%. Wherever there's Muslims being killed, Muslims being tortured, it's always the Israel and US behind it.
obviously Israel, they will supply weapons to these countries to gang rape Muslim women and to chop them up. But what that is expected from Israel and the Zionist regime. But what is not, what I am angry about is that the Saudi regime, they're bombing the children in Yemen every day, and they stop the humanitarian aid from coming in. If they used 1% of them weapons, they could have freed Burma.
Are you aware that Israel is supplying arms to Myanmar government?
I didn't know that, no.
I'm going to conclude because...
So tell me, what do you think the international community and not just the Muslim countries can do for the Rohingya people?
I think it's not just about the Muslim, it's about the humanity. And I think as a human, it doesn't matter if you're Muslim, Christian, Jews. As a human, there's a lot we can do.
Protests in front of embassies. Also, we could form pressure groups. We could write to the world leaders, write to NATO, get the United Nations involved.
The Muslim leaders, they should be all right now working hard to save the Muslim women and take revenge for the gang rapes and the torture and the butcher of the Muslim Burmese women.
We have lost hope. The only one we turn to is the one...
Are you aware that Aung San Suu called all this information fake news?
This is so sad. Someone who has been imprisoned for 12 years and word was there, we were there to demonstrate against her unlawful detention. So we demand her, why she is being silent. Who is stopping her, If we were there for her, so she should stand up for all those innocent people.
She's probably being paid to be silenced.
And what power does she have to stop this?
She has all the power. Sorry, I was going to swear then. She has all the power. It's her country. The army is working for her. The police is working for her.
Is the one who is upholding the skies without any pillars.
Well, a very Islamic demonstration, that one, and that's part of the problem, isn't it? That if we all say it's not about Muslims, it's about humanity, but the only people that are demonstrating are Muslims. The speakers are chanting Allahu Akbar and so on. It's not exactly the way to build a broad mass movement, is it? Especially when it's quite clear, as our last speaker said, that the Muslims don't have the power to actually change this. The people who have the power have no interest in changing it. I wanted to challenge you on one or two of the points that you made. I hate nationalism, by the way. Scottish nationalism, British nationalism, any of these nationalisms are alien to me. My flag is red. My country is the future. I don't care about countries, nations, states, and so on. But one could infer from what you said that the answer, therefore, is a caliphate, whether one likes it or not. Because, of course, nobody asked to be in the Ottoman Caliphate. The Ottoman Caliphate conquered them. And nobody voted for it. Nobody could vote themselves out of it. So nationalism is a very mixed bag, but so is Islamism a very mixed bag. For example, there are many Muslim countries where minorities are treated extremely badly. Saudi Arabia is the obvious example. If you are with the dominant trend within Saudi Arabia, then you're one level of citizen. If you're a different kind of Muslim from that dominant trend, you're a second-class citizen. If you're a Christian, don't even bother showing up. If you celebrate Christmas or wear a cross around your neck, you'll be in a dungeon somewhere. So it would be wrong, wouldn't it, to contrast Islamic countries with these nationalistic countries as if one were doing better than the other. What do you say?
Well, I'd say it'd be wrong to describe the current regimes in the Muslim world as even Islamic. I would say that nationalist, secular regimes, some have a pretense to token aspects of religion, but generally doesn't go beyond the throat in that sense. But if we look at Islamic history, Islam has had a proud 1,300 years of multi-ethnic, multi-religious pluralism. And sure, it wasn't a utopia and there were bad Muslims, of course, but the rule which was set by the Prophet Muhammad, which said that anyone who has harmed a, let's say, a non-Muslim citizen who lives amongst Muslims is as if they've harmed him directly. And as Muslims, we would never even want to touch a hair on the head of the Prophet Muhammad. So, and the Prophet Muhammad is saying that to harm a non-Muslim is like harming him. So non-Muslims had this protection, and we see this throughout many records of rabbis, the chief rabbi of Turkey inviting the Jews in Spain to go over to Turkey and escape the Spanish Inquisition, because he said that the Jews want for nothing in Turkey. They live life of comfort, and the taxes are light, and it's a nice place. They are tolerated. Not tolerated, they are accepted, actually. I don't like the word tolerate, I like the word acceptance. And again, Rabbi Tudela went to the Abbasid Caliph in Baghdad and saw that, again, Jews were treated, and he wrote this in his memoirs. He wrote this, which is why we have it, how Jews were accepted and tolerated and treated with fairness and so on, like everybody else. So this is the history that Islam kind of brings to the table. But what we see in the current world, and yes, what we see in Muslim governments, let's take, for example, Egypt. It's a secular regime. They kicked out the Muslim Brotherhood, right? It's meant to be secular rights for all, and yet we see there is a large amount of intolerance against the Christian minority areas in Egypt, for example, and under this secular regime. And we saw ethnic strife in a number of other secular countries in the Middle East, which, for example, in Iraq, after Saddam Hussein was kicked out of power, we see now that there's a mass exodus of Iraqi Christians from Iraq. So they've been living there with their churches for hundreds of years under Islamic caliphate, no less, but in this post-colonial secular era after Saddam Hussein, they saw the need to leave Iraq. So it's not Islam that's causing the intolerance here. It's clearly something that's much more modern.
It's not Islam, but it is Muslims, because the Iraqi regime is not secular. Neither is the dictatorship in Egypt a secular government.
It doesn't contradict secularism. Secularism just detaches religion from politics. And of course, religion gives exhortations to not do bad things when it's beneficial, whereas in secular politics, people do bad things because it's beneficial, right? So religion, without that restraining force of religion, preventing people from committing injustice, the kind of religion which says to forgive your enemies and to do good even if you don't get anything in return, once you've taken that out of the equation, then people, it's just Machiavellian calculus as to what benefits my regime, what keeps it more stable, who do I have to oppress to do that. If someone's criticizing me, I have to imprison them because that's destabilizing my power. So this is how this is the politics of the Muslim world. So I would agree. There's problems of racism. There's problems of ethnic strife. There's problems of intolerance and
sectarianism.
I would say sectarianism, backwardness, of course. But we saw all this blossom in the post-colonial world that the West created in the Middle East. Before, in Ottoman times, you had the Ottoman regime, which is predominantly Sunni, maintaining the Shia shrines of Iraq, right? Which you'd never ever consider that would ever happen in the Middle East now. So what happened to the Middle East? And unfortunately, these are Muslims. People that call themselves Muslim. Yeah, they're Muslim, but they are following. They don't understand Islam. They're following these ideas which were imported and imposed upon them, told to their fathers and their fathers' fathers, of a secular nationalism, a detachment from looking at the world as humanity and as the Ummah as well. And so, of course, they're very parochial and they only focus on their own benefit, and they will be intolerant.
That's been a very interesting exchange. Let's go to the middle, to the gentleman in the middle. To paraphrase Oscar Wilde, the more they talked of their religion, the faster I counted my spoons. Yes, sir, go ahead.
Yes, I just wanted to highlight the two standards. In the case of what's happening in Burma, what we hear is that there's crime, a genocide, and when you look at what was happening in Libya, they were saying that Gaddafi was about to kill his own people.
That was their excuse for the invasion, yes.
So this shows how international organizations, UN, in fact, are inactive.
Very good point.
So, in fact, they destroyed Libya on just...
They destroyed Libya because they suspected there might be a genocide in one city, Benghazi, but there is actually a genocide going on in Burma, and they don't want anything to do with it.
So this is the first point I wanted to underline. Second point I want to underline here is the role of, let's say, what we call the Muslim international organization. We've got to define who they are. I remember that, like in the 70s, 80s, when President Sékou Touré from Guinea he was part of the Muslim League, and he was trying to bring his ideas, he was put aside as if he was not regarded by the others as a real Muslim, or as a Muslim who had the right to say anything about the Muslim world. So, in fact, what I want to say here is that if you look at the African continent, where you've got lots of Muslim countries, it seems that they have no voice and they've got no power. They've got their own problems as well. So this is why, in fact, we've got to think about who is the Muslim world, who has the power within all these different Muslim countries to do and denounce what's happening in that country. So that's the second point. And a third point is about when we think about having said that some Muslim countries have no power and cannot do anything because they've got their own problems, and also because they are not regarded by many other Muslim countries as Muslims. I've got to ask you one question. If you look at some countries in the Middle East, I can't remember when they've been constructive.
When they've been
constructive, no.
Well, that's undoubtedly.
That's a.
But
so,
let's look at non-state actors. Why did 100,000, or maybe many more, self-defined jihadists go to Syria and spill an ocean of blood, but not one has turned up in Burma to defend the Rohingya people? Not that they would want them, but what happened there? A lot of these so-called jihadists that went to Syria are from Bangladesh, from Pakistan, but living and growing up in Britain or France or Belgium. But they went to Syria when they couldn't speak a word of Arabic to destroy it, but not one of them turned up in Burma. You got any idea why that might be?
Might be, again, racism. Maybe it is because
the Burmese people look like them.
I think the money is not as good.
Let's hear from the front there. That's a very interesting theory. Just repeat what you said.
I think the money is not as good as what they're paying in Syria. And obviously maybe the sponsor is not there, the sponsor of the Syrian conflict. I just wanted to take a look at this conflict from a geopolitical point of view. I think there's a much bigger picture. So the current geopolitical climate is defined by the power struggle between the power struggle of the modern Roman Empire in demise, which is the United States regime, against the re-emerging China and re-emerging Russia. Now, I think when a conflict takes place, I always ask myself, who would it benefit? And I'm looking at it, and obviously I'm looking at Burma, which is an ally of China, and also probably China is the biggest ally they have. And also you have Russia, which is a strong ally of China, which is in the U.S. interest to pit Russia and China against one another. And one has to understand that there's a there's a major Muslim population in Russia. Most of the southern states in Russia, for instance, Chechnya, Dagestan, and so on, they are Muslims in Russia have much more say than they do in, let's say, Britain and France. They're native Russians. They're not just considered as immigrants. They're considered as native Russians. So, if the Russian government acts upon this conflict and, let's say, cancels out the diplomatic relations with Burma or takes action, they're damned, because in this case they'll be going against China. If they don't do anything at all, then the Russian Muslims wouldn't be happy either. So I think it's a very smart move. If this was, and it looks like a provocation to me as well, and if this provocation was orchestrated by the United States, which usually is the case, I think it's a very smart move in terms of chess, geopolitical chess. That's what I'm thinking. I mean, want to see your view on that as well.
Very interesting. No, of course it's a possibility. I don't usually grant the Western leaders that level of sophistication. They're not James Bond, as I always say. They're more Mr. Bean. Well, the final segment coming up on the struggle of the Rohingyas just to stay alive. We'll be right back. You're watching كلمة with me, George Galloway, on Mayadeen television. We're discussing the plight of the Rohingya people, who are now the subject of literally an attempted genocide. Whether they succeed in eradicating the Rohingya people from Burma for all time, in the way that another ethno-religious supremacist state called Israel has more or less done to the Palestinian people, at least for more than half a century, still remains to be seen. Let's hear from the gentleman in the middle. Yes, sir.
Some people mentioned about the responsibility of Islamic countries. I wanted to mention a few of those Islamic countries, like Libya, who have been mainly bombed by US. Like Libya, is Afghanistan going to help? Or is Syria going to help? Or is Iraq going to help? There's no single Muslim country that America left alone. They have to pay one way or the other. Is Iran going to help? America is in an intense Cold War against Iran. And they are being criticized on every single point, in every way possible. Whereas a neighboring country like Saudi Arabia, they can do whatever they want. They can do whatever they want to Qatar or start a war in Yemen, and they receive a lot of support from America because of the petrodollars. So who is going to help? These Islamic countries are at the moment in a mess right now because of the US, because of the interventions of the US. And you see, they get to a level where their puppets like Israel can start sending weapons around, and they're such hypocrites that they're sitting on 200 nukes and they're criticizing other countries in the region for...
they denounced North Korea's nuclear weapons.
Exactly.
You couldn't make it up.
Which is a joke. And I think on regarding Burma, this is more a humanity problem. Is not just Muslims' responsibility. Once we take it to that level and recognize that this is a humanity problem, and we expect countries like US that intervene in everything to intervene here as well. They intervene in places which has nothing to do with them, like Korea, or in the 50s, like you said, you were growing up during those ages. They intervened, China kicked them out, and then they just settled there. It even got to a point where their commander was asking to drop another nuclear bomb to win that war for the third time after Nagasaki and Hiroshima, you know? So this is a humanity problem. It needs to go to the UN. If China blocks it or other country blocks it, some form of sanctions can be put in place to send warriors there, you know, and win the war is almost impossible. Like the gentleman said there's not enough money in it, so nobody's going to go there.
Well, that's a pretty good summary. You're a pretty smart guy. I hope you come back. This gentleman in the front.
Thank you. Chanel from Manchester. Just for me, George, I've maybe a bit cynical with Turkey's efforts, President Erdogan's, and historically, I mean, I think he took the Palestinians to the brink, and when the Mavi Marmara ship got attacked, he kind of like went very quiet on the Israelis. There was a time when the Chinese were attacking the West Turkestan Muslims, and he did nothing. And for me, he's kind of like, again, well, I suppose my question is he going to take the Burmese Muslims or Rohingya to the brink again and then let them down? Because history says he does a lot of talking, but not enough actions. And for me, I'm just very cynical.
Well, you're not more critical of Erdogan than me, but at the very least you can say he's the only person who's put his hand in his pocket for the Rohingya. If they've got a plastic sheet over their head, he bought it. If they've got a piece of bread in their mouth, he supplied it. So whilst I could talk for the rest of the night about my criticisms of Erdogan and the Turkish government, At the very least, you can say he's the only Muslim leader, the only one, actually, with the Maldives, a small island, a small holiday resort to me, though I've never been there, I may be disrespecting them. Full marks to them. They have actually announced an embargo on all things supplied by the Burmese state. But the Maldives and Turkey are the only two countries who've done anything at all. So on this occasion, I certainly wouldn't want to be criticizing them. The lady behind? Yes, madam.
Hello, everyone. My name's Shana, and I'm from London. I have a disappointment that everything that's going on, it is so big, but there's no coverage. People don't even know about this stuff. I work in a school, and recently, with all the videos and all the things that's going around in texting and YouTube, and with my sister here, her and her husband has come up with a plan that we're just sitting on our hands, we're doing nothing. Let's go over there, let's try to make some funds and try to help the people, and we're going, and this is more of a humanity thing. We're not Burmese. Yes, our parents are Bangladeshi, but we're not going to the places where our parents are born. I haven't been there in 20 years. I'm going to the borders where people are the refugees and need help. We're trying to raise money and trying to go there and trying to help on ground. My other question is all this money that's going there from, like you said earlier, 25 million Britain has helped with, where is that? Where is it going?
That's a good question, but 25 million won't do much.
It won't do much.
They literally have to buy a plastic sheet to sleep under. No one gives them a plastic sheet, and if they can't buy it, they won't have one. Yeah. No one is giving them food, they have to buy it. It's unbelievable that Bangladesh has been landed with this gigantic elephant in the room, and the response is peanuts. Yeah. 25 million from Britain for 500,000 people. Do the maths. Yeah. That doesn't solve the problem even for a week, never mind a month or a year. And I want to come back, if I may, to our distinguished guest who represents the Rohingya community here in this discussion. You must be very worried, and I'm sorry to tell you, if you're not, you should be, that actually you will become, like the Palestinians have become, a refugee problem. Your right to return to your country will slip off the political agenda, and will be in 5 years or 10 years now, we'll be here discussing how we can raise some more charity funds for you. Is this in your mind? How seriously are you intent upon your people's return to their own land?
Well, in fact, we are not. We don't like to live a life of humiliation as refugees and beggars in Bangladesh or elsewhere. So we want to return to our homeland. Burmese government must give us the right of return. And once practically what we have seen, we have experienced, once we are out of the country, it is really, really very difficult to get re-entry again in our country.
Well, they've actually put landmines along the border so that you'll be killed if you try.
Again, the land, the vacated land has been, populated. We have been depopulated, fully populated by the Buddhist community. So then everything is now not in our hand. So this thing is, we must be able to go to our homeland with and rehabilitated, with honorably, repatriated and rehabilitated with compensation under a state program. That is very important. The other thing is, as to the solving of the problem, this is a long-standing problem of the world, one of the most important problem. As to the Muslim world, this is as old as the Palestinian problem, the Rohingya problem. So this is the way things are going. We have become completely helpless. So the government itself is a persecutor, and we have long expected Aung San Suu Kyi that she will speak as for us. But they seem that she is completely a complicit to our genocide, in the sense that recently on 19th of this month even, she has given a diplomatic briefing. In a diplomatic briefing, she did not condemn the military. Rather, she was going to to defend the military people as to their persecution of the Rohingyas. And moreover, she is lying to the world that nothing is wrong happened to the Rohingya people. This means that
500,000 of them just ran away.
Yeah.
This is right out of the Israel playbook, isn't it?
Yeah, how does she say?
Well, the Palestinians left.
How does she say
So why
that,
should we let them come back?
How does she say that still half of the villages are, many villages are still intact? How did he say that? It means a hypocritical statement. She doesn't have any moral courage.
I don't know how bad you have to be to get a Nobel Peace Prize.
So that should be revoked. Actually, this is a very the world must revoke it. They have to take back.
Just Obama has.
So
yes, Obama, Kissinger, Rabin. I mean, we could go on. How bad do you have to be to get a Nobel Peace Prize?
Yeah, regarding Aung San Suu Kyi, this is a completely, this is what I think this is accidental, completely accidental. She does not deserve it, in fact. And moreover, she becomes a darling of the West. That's one reason. This is
well, so, some fools say, well, she's not in control. The military is in control. She has no power. She has enormous moral, soft power. If she had stood and said, what's happening to the Rohingya is completely unacceptable, and I call on the world community and so on, it would have rung across the globe. But in fact, she did the opposite.
The problem is she's lying. She's defending well. She's not telling the truth. That's the problem. So as to the solving of the Rohingya problem is that we should be able to return our home. We should be able to live peacefully and honorably with all human dignity and rights, and coexist peacefully as equal in our own homeland. That's very important. With collective rights. We need a collective rights. We cannot be, this way we cannot stay in our...
They already took your citizenship away. Yeah?
They took that
away years ago.
We have nothing to lose what we have already lost. And then mostly we lost under during the democratic, the so-called democratic transition. And then you look, in 2014, for the first time, the UN, we are excluded from the UN sponsored census. And then in 2015, they have taken up our voting rights. And we people have been exercising right to vote and right to be elected right from 1936, when the British first time introduced the voting rights in British colonial period. And we did it up to the Constitution, 2000 participating up to 2010, except in the last election in 2015. This is after 80 years. After 80 years, then they have taken our voting right. And for the first time, there was not only the Rohingya, even no Muslim candidates have been selected, even by NLD in last election. That means we have not benefited from the so-called democratic transition in Burma.
So in the puppet parliament in Burma, there's not a single
single Muslim candidate. I'm not talking about this is Rohingya. Not a single, for the first time, not a single Muslim candidate.
Remarkable, extraordinary, I must say. Well, it's been a good discussion. I wish I could say to you, sir, that I had great confidence that you will prevail and return to your homes. Certainly, I will not be in second place to anyone in trying to help you do so, but I'm sure you recognize you have a very uphill struggle now, as the Palestinian people found out many, many decades ago. I've been George Galloway. This has been Kalima Horra on Al Mayadeen Television. Thanks for watching.